good evening to our viewers. Thank you for joining us again tonight on the evening review. My name is Tebo Njebela. Tonight on the platform, we are joined by Isack Hamata. He is the Director of Marketing and Communication at the Namibia Football Association, NFA, and he is here to help us understand very disturbing, or the context rather, of a very disturbing incident that happened on Sunday in Okahandja, where a Premier League match was marred by an incident of armed confrontations between the coaches of Bucks, Buccaneers, and Blue Waters. And we just want to hear from NFA, what are the regulations, what are the measures in place so that incidents like this are mitigated going forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Hamata, for making time. Your reaction first and foremost to what transpired on Sunday in Okahandja.
Good evening, and thanks for having me, Trevor, and good evening to your viewers. Obviously, my immediate reaction, as anybody else would react, it's not a good. It's nothing good for football. It's nothing good for Namibia. Just last week, last Saturday, we concluded a very successful hosting of the COSAFA Under-17 Girls Championship, and we were held for having done that in a very free, safe, open manner. Given our climate in the country, political, socio-economic, and all of that, we were really held for putting together a good show. And just a day later, you have incidences of such nature which were reported to us through the official channels. I think that's individually and as the FA, those are not really things that you would really want to see happening in any football facility that where official matches are hosted.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any guidelines? I mean, of course, the NFA is the league administrator at the moment. Are there any guidelines in terms of safety at stadiums, just general guidelines on safety?
Yes, there are in the rules and regulations and in the general statutes guidelines on general safety in all our facilities where we have football engagements, whether it's meetings, whether it's football matches, men and women, boys and girls, that there has to be a certain standard to be adhered, and that includes issues of objects that you bring into that facility, whether they be gun, knives, bottles, sticks, and so on. They are all considered to be weapons, and those are not to be allowed into any stadium, into any facility where football engagements are happening.
Yeah. Who is responsible for ensuring that on match day, those measures are in place?
Look, we have security personnel that are appointed to ensure that none of these items or objects enter the field during match day. Obviously, here we talk about the breach of security where vehicles were not searched before. And also maybe it gives us an opportunity to say to people that if you have not read the rules and regulations and the statutes and any other document that provides for the prohibition of having these facilities or having these objects in our football facilities, that we really just go back and educate our members and the members of our members and all the officials that deal with clubs and other formations in our football. We cannot say that I did not know. As they say, ignorance of the law does not make you innocent. As a football person, you would have known that there are rules, there are procedures, there are guidelines that need to be followed. But yes, the security personnel who have been appointed by the FA to ensure that those objects do not make their entry into the stadium. So it's really generally the FA's responsibility, and on the ground operationally, it's the security officers and the clubs, the home clubs and the visiting clubs. It's everybody's responsibility. But it's generally the NFA's responsibility to ensure that there are security personnel appointed to search vehicles and individuals for any of those objects that I've mentioned. But in this case, we assume that has not been done, considering the gravity of what has happened in Okahandja.
Yeah. Do you have any measures also that I mean, what are the consequences of such behavior if players confront each other violently, or coaches, the technical staff? Do we just say don't do it again, or are there any policies on what must happen when behaviors of that nature occur?
Trevor, Article 60 and its subsections provide for the types of measures that the FA can take pending a disciplinary hearing. The NFA has considered at this stage measures in terms of the provisions of the rules and regulations, and those are being considered. The clubs will be informed. May I just say that decisions will be taken, clubs will be informed of the decision. So, to your question, whether it's just don't do that again, I think we have moved beyond that. We are now at a stage where action is to be taken. The FA is very serious. We had a meeting this morning where the General Secretary, the Interim General Secretary, pronounced himself very strongly, seriously. Members of the management, in consultation with the leadership, said, look, these things have a negative impact on our football. They can chase away sponsors. Players will play under fear. Officials, match officials, even the coaches themselves could be fearing that, am I very safe if I get to any stadium in this country? So we must send a message that there is a rule, there is a law, there's a regulation, and these things are not to be repeated again. If there was a lapse of security, breach of security, we should not see that again from any match going forward.
Yeah. And I suppose, speaking of the security company that is contracted, I'm sure as part of your measures, you'd also have to engage them and make your position clear, because I mean that is on them actually. Failure to detect these objects is on them.
Primarily, it's on them as the custodians of that function on the ground. They have been entrusted to ensure that there's a search mission of every individual, every car, and that has not happened. That discussion will be emphasized. The issue of how we must treat security issues will be emphasized to them so that it does not happen again. Definitely. And also, may I just say, as much as there will be a discussion with the security personnel, us as individuals, as officials managing football, as clubs, as coaches, also need to educate ourselves on what is it that can be allowed into a stadium? What are the risks of carrying weapons of that nature into a stadium? It's expressly indicated in our rules and regulations that they should not be taken into a football facility, be it a meeting room, being at the stadium, soccer field, or whatever it is. So we just need to have an opportunity to educate everybody that this should not be happening again.
Yeah. Moving away from the technical members of teams, especially, I mean, particularly Ronnie Kanalelo and Paulus Shipanga in this particular case, we've also seen, Mr. Hamata, at soccer stadiums, the behavior of fans. Of course, it's very difficult to control a crowd, but when we see fans, and I suppose in the Namibian context, it's even more difficult because we are all bundled in those tents. You couldn't really tell sometimes which fans were throwing cans, and it happens a lot. People throwing cans and really violent behavior. I know that in other countries, I'm a Manchester United fan, as you know, and if you're sitting in the Stratford end of Old Trafford, then you're likely to be 90% likely to be a Man U fan. And when you do not behave accordingly, when clubs fail to contain their fans, clubs themselves get fined. In the Namibian context, how do you deal with crowd violence or fan violence?
We have had incidences in the past of fan violence, and we had very strong security measures. You would have seen, may I just take you back to the Dr. Hage match, African Stars versus Chula Chula, where can throwing spectators or fans were identified by the security officers and by their fellow football spectators, and they were taken out of the football facility and they were kept somewhere and never allowed back into the field until the match finished. So those measures have taken place. The rules provide for that anybody involved in football, whether you are a coach, referee, official, fan or supporter, whichever terminology you want to use there, everybody who makes themselves guilty of one of these transgressions outlined in the rules and regulations, you are liable for suspension or expulsion from any and all football matches. We know from you are a Manchester fan, you know some people have been banned for life from watching football. I remember an incident, I don't know which country particularly, where a guy had to order a crane to watch his favorite team because he misbehaved and he was kicked out for life, and he had to hire that crane. In our country, you must also have knowledge. We must have knowledge that we unfortunately do not have the luxury of cameras around our stadiums, which can identify and spot CCTV cameras, which can identify and spot these culprits. But through the naked eye, we are able to see which fans misbehave. It's a really difficult thing when you have cancel, but the effort is being made to make sure that one or two people that have been seen to be throwing cans or misbehaving or assaulting each other, that they are taken into custody and they are dealt with. So those incidences have happened and they were taken care of. We are just going to have to intensify our effort to make sure that we do not allow cans. What you don't want at the end of it all is to say no cans allowed in the stadium. And I'm sure many people will say it's unfair and whatnot, but if we don't behave, that's the extent to which people can take measures, and we will deny you the opportunity to drink a beer or two. And even the guy who only drinks a soft drink, because it is a can, he or she is not allowed, and just because of the misbehavior of those rowdy fans. So it's unfortunate we have come to this stage where we will consider stringent measures with regard to allowing objects into where we have our football matches. We hope we should not go to that extent, but with incidences like this, I think it's cause for concern, and rules and regulations have to be tightened or rather enforced so that we don't have a repeat of this. And also fans fighting and throwing cans and other objects to each other.
Yeah. The final question on this subject, just before we go on a very short break, Isack, is also almost what you touched on in your last remark there about, I mean, carrying objects into venues is one thing, but we have seen even this past weekend, I don't need to mention the coach, but I've seen footages of a coach who was almost very violent towards the technical members of the opponent of the other team. In other words, this is just like a physical confrontation without any material things being held like a knife or a gun. But are the measures the same in those kind of scenarios, or here we say, nah, it's natural, let them spit in each other's faces?
Why would you go to that extent? No, look, any form of assault, whether by an object or physical confrontation where only hands are involved, those are provided for in terms of the measures to be taken against such culprits. If they are found after investigations to have been true, similar measures will be taken as prescribed by the rules and regulations. So expect an announcement also in that respect, that if the referees report and other reports gathered around that incident, that behavior, the video footage you have spoken about and everything, then the FA would consider that. In fact, the matter is already under consideration. Once a decision is taken around that issue, it will also be shared with the public. This would be the case of the Okahandja incident of 18 May on Sunday.
Yeah. We'll go on a very short break, but Isack, I want us to just delve into afterwards to talk about the budget allocation to NFA. Is it enough? What is it going to be put to in the coming months and whatnot? But that is after the break. We are still talking to Isack Hamata. He is the Director of Marketing and Communication at the Namibia Football Association. Are you a happy man, Isack? You're a proper football man, and you know these things very well in terms of resources and the scarcity thereof. How is NFA taking its allocated budget by government?
We thank the government for that substantial allocation. It's better than not having anything. You would maybe recall that over the past year and a half or 2 years, the NFA has had to dig deep in its own pockets. NFA is not a profit-making institution, but from its savings, it had to fund the activities of the national teams, not just the national team, the national team. So this allocation by government through Treasury comes and it's very welcomed. It will be used for what is intended. And you know, when we talk about the national team, the national teams, particularly the senior men and women, that's why they are called national teams. They belong to the nation. The nation must fund the participation of these national teams in international competitions, whether it's COSAFA, whether it's AFCON or CHAN or World Cup qualifiers or the competitions proper, including friendly matches, because you do not prepare properly if you do not have friendly matches. So it's the responsibility of government to take care of the national teams, which is the teams of the nation. The NFA merely administers in terms of getting these teams ready, entering them as the custodian of football in these competitions. But in terms of the funding, that really should come from the government, as it has been all these years. So we are thankful that that has been considered. We are equally thankful that the government has prioritized sports as the number 2 priority after agriculture, and maybe top of that would be football. We have also heard expressions by our ministers of sport or responsible for sport, both the minister and deputy minister. They've been around. In the first week since their appointment, we have had meetings with them. We are very pleased with the sentiment they've expressed. They pay a high premium to the facilities issue, that sports must be elevated to a level where it can become a full employer, that the player doesn't have to go to work or to whatever else during the day and come to training at night. We want players to be fully professional. We support the support we get from our ministers and therefore from our government, and prioritizing sports to that extent really speaks about the excitement that we have as the FA, and I'm sure other sports codes also have that same excitement, that football and other sports codes have become a priority. So that budgetary allocation should be seen in that spirit, that it is government's responsibility to fund the participation of our national teams in international competitions. Because when and I can tell you, I always say this thing and I don't tire to say it, football determines the mood of society. Somebody that doesn't know any player in the national team gets very angry when the national team loses. And equally, they get excited when the national team wins. Our bars, the opening and closing of those, are determined by whether we lose or win. And therefore, it's a national team. And the nation must take care of its team. Just as we throw pebbles to the national team when it doesn't do well, when the coach, we think he doesn't have the best formation. It's in the spirit of us all owning that team. But one person is in charge of making sure he selects the best team as he deems necessary. But overall, it's a national team. The funding must come from government and from Namibians, for that matter.
Yeah. And just for the record, how much has been allocated to NFA in the current financial year? Did I see 40 million somewhere?
40 million. You wanted to say billion. Hey.
I wish it was 40 billion.
We were going to be very excited. It's 40 million.
Okay, no, wonderful.
Yes.
That money, Isa, could be, it's actually really a decent allocation, but there are also expenditures beyond your control as the FA, such as playing matches abroad, home matches of the Breweries and other teams. abroad because we simply have no facilities accredited to host international matches. It would have been much more. That allocation would have meant a lot more if you didn't have to do some of those things. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you in where I come from, we would say you are exactly correct. When you look at the 40 million in isolation, you look at it as a lot of money. But when you contextualize the 40 million with regard to what we have said, that we don't play our home matches at home, uh, when we played our home matches at home, remember we also take care of the ground transport and accommodation of the visiting team. Now we take care of our own cost to transport our own national team to a foreign country, pay for accommodation on that end, and also the visiting team, its ground transport and hotel accommodation and other necessities as prescribed by the football governing bodies. That is at our cost. So that 40 million then is reduced significantly in terms of how you could have used it had we had the opportunity to play at home. And that's why I like the energy put behind us having to come back, us having to make sure that facilities are upgraded or renovated or whatever the action may be there, so that we can bring the brave warriors and the gladiators back to Namibia, so that we minimize on the cost that we now spend. And maybe just put it in context. When you book a facility, that's already a couple of hundreds of thousands. You then have to make sure that every other thing, the police and everything, the buses that you hire for the visiting teams and for yourself. Here we could simply go to to a bus company and negotiate a deal. There you must make sure you rent that bus. You need to rent two buses, you need to rent cars for the HODs of those teams and all of that. So there's a lot of cost involved in having your game outside the country. So internally it would have been very great. But yes, beggars can't be choosers. We are thankful for the 40 million. It could have been more had we had our home ground here at home, had our facilities been in order. But we are also mindful of the fact that there is energy being put behind the effort to bring the brave warriors home. So we hope that before the end of the year or early next year, that some of our matches could be played here. And with regard to how the 40 million will be spent, obviously, if final sign off of the budget happens, then we look at what is the exact allocation. Is it 40 million? Yes. We look at the calendar of matches that we have to play during this financial year, because it must coincide the calendar of matches and the budget year. And then we look at what other allocations we will make for every match. And that also determines the number of matches you can play. Where you would have wanted to have, say, 4 friendly matches before big engagements. Let's say, for argument, we have a match in September, a World Cup qualifier, and another in October. We would really want 2 serious friendly matches. Would the budget allow for that? And those are the decisions we are making with regard to the allocations that have been made for the FA with regard to the national team. So that's where we are. But again, we emphasize our thankfulness to the government, to those who have spoken in favor of that 40 million and more, that it will be put to good use. It's for the benefit of the national team. It's for the benefit of the team of the nation. And we need to support that endeavor to have more funds allocated to the national team, so that it can not just go and participate, but it goes and competes, because it would have prepared thoroughly at home.
Yeah. My final question to you, Isack, we have a minute left, is just about, I'm always very, very scared of the repeat of the past incidences where our Premier League had gone for seasons without a ball being kicked. We have a sponsor now, a very generous sponsor in Debmarine. And this season will conclude very soon. Are you confident that we will still have the Premier League being played locally next year, irrespective of what Debmarine decides with the sponsorship?
Football must be played, football must be played, and there are efforts to ensure that what we stand for, which is to have football played, will continue. We are hoping that our sponsors will see wisdom in continuing the sponsorship so that our young people, the men, 340 men taking the field for the different teams, the officials, the referees, and everybody else who benefit from football continues to benefit from that football. We always say the impact of the sponsorship of Deb Marine in the case of the Premiership stretches beyond the 340 players. It's a lot of us that benefit from that sponsorship. It may sound little to some, but for us, it's an appreciated amount of 18 million per season that nobody else would give you willingly. Deb Marine has taken the chance to renew that up to this season. And we're just hoping that come next season, we would have an opportunity to continue with our football so that it can continue to benefit the big numbers of Namibians, boys and girls, men and women. There's this theory that I have, which I won't say loudly, but you said it. If there is an impasse in football for whatever reason, the mood is not so nice. We start to take on each other, social media, we are not happy with each other. But the moment football takes off, we don't care how it takes off. We are just happy that it takes off. Some people don't even attend football matches, but they are just happy that football is there, and they can be happy that somebody benefits from the football. And that there are things we can talk about. Your team has lost, your team has won, we are celebrating, we are mourning, all of those things. And that's really, as I said earlier, football determines the mood of society. And we would like football to continue to determine the mood of society. And that's by having football on the field of play, supported by a sponsor.
Yes, thank you, Isack. Speaking of mood, I am not in the best of moods today. Manchester United is taking on Tottenham Hotspurs in Bilbao tonight. But it's true what you're saying, that indeed football plays that roller coaster role in our lives. And we appreciate your input, Isack. Really, thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much, and have a great evening. Just before I go, this night we are launching or announcing a committee that is going to spearhead the Brave Warriors World Cup 2026 campaign so that we mobilize support for the Brave Warriors in all manners and forms, whether it's financial, material, and just galvanize Namibia around the national team. We stand the best chance ever to qualify for the World Cup. We are second at this point. We only need to beat everybody in the remaining matches for us to qualify for the World Cup 2026. And that's really the effort that's starting this evening with the launch of that, or the announcement of that committee, which will then announce the launch and any other activity ancillary to the World Cup qualification campaign. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Wonderful initiative. Thank you, Mr. Isack. And really for the Brave Warriors, that would be epic. We hope it will, we are this close, like Isack Hamata is saying. And that is, of course, Isack Hamata is the Director of Marketing and Communication at NFA. Thank you for watching.